Boris Johnson has sucked up to this left-wing nonsense of net zero carbon dioxide by 2050. Remember, as I've mentioned to you, Biden called it the existential crisis of our times. He said the science is undeniable. But I also mentioned to you how Barack Obama's former chief scientist has pulled the rug from under this nonsense talk in his recent book, Unsettled. Quote, leaders talk about existential threat, climate emergency, disaster crisis, but in fact, when you actually read the literature, there's no support for that kind of hysteria. The science is insufficient to make useful projections about how the climate will change in coming decades, much less what effect human beings will have on it, unquote. And he said, a self-declared Democrat, advisor to Obama, principal advisor to Obama, he said, quote, he's increasingly dismayed by climate alarmism. He said, yes, the planet has warmed and the burning of fossil fuels is partly to blame, but he said the impact is, quote, tiny, complex and uncertain and occurs against a backdrop of natural climate change over thousands of years that dwarfs the recent increases in temperature. He repeats, the science isn't settled. His words, the science is insufficient to make useful projections about how the climate will change. Well, here it appears as though the National Party, minus that incompetent leader McCormack, who, believe it or not, is the acting Prime Minister of Australia. He was an embarrassment in Question Time today. But some National Party people are really talking sense and are the hope of the side. One is Bridget McKenzie, formerly the Deputy Leader. She's one of the people with ability that McCormack has tipped onto the sidelines, and she's said that setting a specific date to reach net zero emissions would, quote, fly in the face of the Nationals' public policy commitment. Bridget McKenzie joins me. Bridget, thank you for your time. Thank you for talking common sense. Your lot may yet save the economy. But the Prime Minister in Britain has said, I've been saying for some period of time the destination is clear. I've made it very clear that we are moving towards net zero, and I talked about a carbon neutral economy. Bridget, is the destination clear to the National Party?
Well, Alan, great to be with you, and you're dead right. It's not clear to the National Party. I don't think it's clear to the Australian people. The National Party, as the second party in this coalition government, has not signed up to net zero anything at any time. And we'll take a lot of convincing that that is actually the destination we need to get to, because we know it'll be our miners, our farmers, our manufacturers that will be paying the price for all this posturing. And right now, Alan, as you know, the international rules are being written by rich industrialised nations who have access to zero-emission energy sources like nuclear power, like the G7. And I can tell you right now, Joe Biden and Boris Johnson aren't going to be slaughtering half their cattle herd or plunging their citizens into darkness or shutting down their manufacturing industries as a result of chasing this. They're chasing this because it suits their economies. And for a resource-rich nation like us, whose thermal coal is actually lowering emissions across the globe as we export it out of the Newcastle port, that's something we should be championing and making sure is written into these international agreements.
You are the hope of the side. Look, I spoke last night to Treverson Baker, who's an energy billionaire. He's got a commitment to renewable energy and electric cars, and he's selling electric car fast chargers around the world. But he also said, and he's been in the industry more than 50 years, quote, the existing coal-fired power stations are required to deliver reliable and secure supply for decades to come. Would you and the National Party agree with that?
Absolutely, Alan. I mean, we've been so public about this, and not just from our Central Queenslander champions like Kenny O'Dowd and Michelle Landry and Maddie Canavan. Right throughout the party, we know that to have reliable, affordable power in this country for decades, we are going to need coal-fired power generation. That is just a fact.
Yeah.
Cities might not like to hear it, but it's a fact.
Good on you. And Treverson Baker said as well, without nuclear, and you and I have talked about this before, we'll talk about it again, and no significant baseload hydro generation, we can't replace existing coal-fired power stations. He said the demonisation of essential coal-fired power generation in Australia, with the heads of banks and insurance companies announcing the withdrawal of essential services to essential businesses supplying this. But he said 2/3 of the electricity demands of businesses and residents. He said, you'll bugger the country. You're not going to have cheap power. Jobs are not going to be there. What do you do with these outfits, Bridget, who are saying we won't lend. We won't lend to a farmer unless he tells us what his climate change policy is, the bloke driving the tractor.
Right.
What do you do?
I think it's an abomination. We've seen our National Party senators have been pursuing the banks through the Senate on this exact issue for months. We've got the big four who've forgotten that they're actual financial institutions and should be lending on risk, and somehow have got their moral compass, that there's somehow a moral compass for our society. We've got churches for that, Alan. And what the banks need to realise is thermal coal, largest export out of Newcastle Port, has a very bright future, as recent reports show. So there's great financial underpinnings.
Well, the ANZ Bank said they won't lend.
Local jobs.
The ANZ Bank said they won't lend.
Exactly.
No, yeah.
They've forgotten what their job is in this
Just before we
country.
go, you have said, just confirm again, that the Nationals have not set a specific date to reach net zero emissions, and anybody by 2050 we'll all be dead by then, and we'll just leave the debt and the ruination of the economy to everyone else. But you said it would fly in the face of Nationals' public policy. Now, that's where you stand. That's where you stand.
Absolutely. Unequivocally, we will not let our people be put under the bus to chase some fake ambition to appease overseas masters.
Let me tell you something. You've just won millions of votes, because I believe the quiet Australians agree with those sentiments entirely, Bridget. We'll talk again and talk often. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Alan.
How impressive is she? That's exactly, in layman's language, what people are saying in the streets, in the pubs and on Struggle Street every day.